Jim.
Hey, Andrew, you want to know something?
What's that?
I don't feel like I get enough bagpipes in my life. I don't hear enough bagpiping music, and I don't hear enough bagpiping talking. I want more of it. In fact, I wouldn't mind having it on the daily.
Well, boy, Jim, do I have an offering for you.
Tell me more.
It's called Dojo U Insider, and it's a daily bagpipe lesson podcast that you can get for just $5 a month. It's the most affordable bagpipe education money can buy.
But, Andrew, if you're going to tell me it's 14 cents a lesson, then I'm going to assume that it's going to be really terrible instructors, like people I've never heard of who have no credentials.
That's not true. No, I'm the worst instructor on the list. You got people like Rob Matheson, Alistair Henderson, Pipe Sergeant of Inverarian District, Cam Drummond, you might know him. He played in the Glenfiddich not too long ago. We're just wrapping up a music history for bagpipe segment on Dojo U Insider. So anyway, we'll leave it there for now, Jim, but head over to pipersdojo.com/insider if you're curious.
Sounds really cool.
You know what else sounds really cool? Joining that band with that hip new pipe major that just took over.
Everybody wants to flock to the pipe band that's got the hip new pipe major.
Yep.
Some hot shot.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. You ever been in one of those bands where it had something other than the hip new pipe major? Maybe it was difficult.
So a couple things here. I would say just right off the bat, I've been fortunate to play in bands with amazing pipe majors almost my entire life. The only exception being the bands in which I was the pipe major, where, so maybe I wasn't, maybe I wasn't the best.
Where you just wanted to leave, right?
Yeah, maybe I wasn't the best pipe major all the time. But when I first started playing, my pipe major was the incredible, most underrated pipe major I can think of probably in EUSPBA history. The great Jim Clough was my first pipe major for a long time. And then Donald Lindsay was the pipe major of Orrin Moore for a long time. Eventually, I went to play in SFU, Terry Lee. Many would wisely put into consideration for greatest pipe major of all time. He's the only person from outside of the UK region to win multiple world championships. Just throwing it out there. And I think there's probably a reason why. After that, came back to Orrin Moore, where I was the pipe major for a while. And we had success. We did have great success with the Orrin Moore project. And then after that, played with Adam Holdaway, another great pipe major for a couple of years, Stuart Highlanders.
Yeah.
After that, played with Stuart Little and Inverary, another great pipe major, in my opinion.
I think that's a safe one. Probably most people will agree with that opinion.
Absolutely.
Pretty safe.
Good music, couple of World Pipe Band Championships, pretty good. Yeah, that's been my career, really. And apologies if I skipped any. I don't think I did. I played for a couple student pipe majors over the years.
Yeah,
there was a guy named Tom. What was his last name? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. And then Devin Ashram when I was at St. Andrews. By the way, my internet is saying it's trying to reconnect. You still hearing me? Jim, let me know if we came back. I had an internet moment. You hearing me? Bum, bum. You hearing me yet, Jim? Jim.
I was tired of hearing about your pipe majors, so I hung up on you.
Needless to say, Jim, a lot of great pipe majors for me. So I've never really played in bands with suboptimal leadership. In my opinion, I've always had great leaders. And I think I've been fortunate.
But
that's not always the case, though, is it, Jim? I feel like there's some bad pipe majors out there.
And you've come into contact with people who have played with or for less than ideal pipe majors. And if I may quote you to you, Andrew, if I may quote some of your own words to yourself.
Oh, God.
You say here in this document I have before me, you say, and that's you speaking, I come into daily contact with pipers who are exceedingly frustrated and who feel developmentally and creatively stifled to the point that they are often ready to quit piping altogether. More often than not, there seems to be a clear pattern behind the piper's frustrations. Since that pattern is so pervasive, in my mind at least, that's your mind at least, you're going to come out and just say it. Too many pipe majors are suffocating their constituents, and it's got to stop.
Boy, wow, those are some fighting words right there.
Yeah. And I should say too, Andrew, that I also have played with really great pipe majors. I also have a lot of sympathy for, I think there are a lot of pipe majors out there in their local bands who are essentially volunteers. Nobody else was willing to
Yeah.
do it, and so they're willing to. And a shortcoming, I don't want this to be misunderstood. There can be shortcomings because of lack of experience or something, and these are pipe majors who are open to learning and ready to learn and want to do better.
Growth mindset.
That's great. And I think anybody playing for a person like that is going to be like, this is still a lovely human and we're all learning together. And that's all really great. I think the problematic habits are something else that I'm sure we'll get into.
Yep. Let's get into it, Jim. I think if I'm picking up what you're putting down, Jim, you're referring to the article that we wrote several years ago at the dojo.
Spicy.
Just for giggles, a slightly spicy one, a little clickbait title. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was 10 clues your pipe major sucks.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Yeah, and a little bit clickbaity, like, but a lot of people did click on it. But I feel like the 10 reasons are, I think, we're going to find out if I would still stand by the 10 reasons.
Yeah,
let's have them. Let's go through the 10. Let's go through the 10 and we'll talk about them.
Okay, so the first one, you call it big fish syndrome. So you suggest the big fish PM, pipe major, doesn't seem to care about the band's improvement, right? They'll play things and they'll claim that the audience who's listening, whether it's in a parade or anything else like that, right? They'll say, oh, they won't notice that we're playing the same tune that we've been playing for 20 years or things like that. They're prioritizing their own stature over a hunger to make better music.
Exactly right. A great test of whether or not your pipe major suffers from big fish syndrome would be if a great piper moved to town and offered to get involved in the band. How would the pipe major react?
I think they'd say no. Or if they got involved, they'd try to like not let them talk during practice, or they'd bring up things, and then when they weren't there, the pipe major would then turn to the rest of the band and be like, they don't know what they're talking about. It's really this way.
Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't be welcoming the person in with open arms and just being interested to collaborate with that person in as many ways as reasonably possible, because obviously they would have a ton to offer. And it might not be, maybe they wouldn't say no, maybe they would say yes, but if they handled the situation badly. Oh, by the way, ever been in a band where after people leave, everybody, especially the leadership, talks bad about those people?
Yeah, I definitely, unfortunately, I do know what you're talking about there. Yeah. I feel like it goes along with always having something negative to say about any judge who says something negative about your competition as well. Oh, they just hate us.
That might
just idiots. Or
that might be a good segue to clue number 2, Jim. That might be a segue. Clue number 2 is that the pipe major knows everything. Even though they don't sound like they know everything.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't sound like they know everything when they play, but they do. That would be the next clue.
Yeah. There is one, I want to soften this a little bit with one caveat, just to clarify again. I've played for 2 pipe majors that I can think of, both of whom played great, but both of whom were really new, way newer than I was on the pipes. And so it's like, doesn't sound great. Well, on the one hand, like maybe they weren't like blowing my mind with their fingerwork, you know, they were still learning how to tune, things like that, right? But these were wonderful people who were really good pipe majors. It's not, we're not necessarily talking about like that kind of situation. We're talking more like, this person's been doing this for 50 years. They talk like they know exactly everything. And yet I rarely hear them play. And when I do hear them play, it doesn't sound great. That's kind of more the picture, right?
Yeah. One of the things I remember about playing in the SFU pipe band, because, you know, Terry isn't a type of guy that's going to get up and lay down an 8-jig solo set that just melts your face off. When I was in the band, he wasn't that style of player. However, whenever he struck up his pipes on their own, they always sounded great. It's that, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, my bagpipes. My bagpipes don't really sound like that, do they? So, yeah. One of the things that you won't find on this list is that the pipe major is the best player. I've seldom played in a band where the pipe major is the best player. maybe they're amongst the best players in the band,
Mhm.
but seldom is that the case, right? They don't know everything.
Mm.
A good leader doesn't know everything. A good leader is going to recognize that they're fallible in certain areas. It's going to realize where not necessarily they have weaknesses, but they're going to recognize where they have, let's say, gaps, for lack of a better word, where there might be a certain gap in their experience or their knowledge where other people in the band can chip in and help out, right?
Mhm.
And they don't know everything. I think one of the telltale signs of a not great leader is that they know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely think of many other situations in other aspects of my life, work, etc., where a leader, a manager, etc., somebody in that leadership position, just little off to the side things they'll say about I was just learning about this, or I realized I was wrong about that. These little things that tell me like almost like precognition without even having to think about it. They just signal to me like I can trust this person.
Mhm.
They're willing to be
Yeah.
wrong. They're open to learning. Like I can trust this person. I can work with them. Like that's a good thing.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Let's move on because otherwise we could be here a long time.
Deal.
But there you go. Clue number 2. If they know everything all the time, if they're a know-it-all,
Oh,
can be a telltale sign.
but Andrew, key nugget for clue number 2 before we move on is that I do want to bring up is you suggest that they're very likely to say something like, "We've always done it this way."
Ooh,
Like
yeah.
that's a good strong one right there for sure.
Yeah. If it's not broken, why should we fix it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just not open to innovation.
Which is sometimes wise, but it's sometimes used to avoid uncomfortable issues. Yeah. All right, let's keep it going. Clue number 3.
I hate those guys.
Yeah.
A poor pipe major
Let's see.
hates bands that are better than your band. I love this part. You say, if they win any prizes, it's only because of some shameful behavior. And ain't that the truth? It's always because they recruited the top players from there and there, or it's because
Or they poached. Yeah, they stole all the good players.
They stole all the good players, or they're really good old buddies with that one judge, or something like that.
Yes. Or they have all the money.
They have all the money.
And they never beat you. And they never beat you just because they spanked you musically. I like that too. I should use the word spank more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they gave you a good musical spanking. That's never the reason you lost, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned here too, all score sheets and other feedback meant to be constructive are viewed as stupid.
Yeah. Oh, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you mean? There's a billion crossing noises audible from outside the circle.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Stupid. Everybody has that many crossing noises. Yeah. Yep. I've struggled with a lot of these over the years for sure. It's really hard not to, but you have to. I'm much better now. I'm much better now at receiving my spankings, but it's not always easy to do that. But I think it's important. You're not in control in a band. You're not in control of whether you win or you lose, whether or not the band that you lost to is better or worse than you. You're not in control of it. Maybe they are doing bad things, or maybe they are just better than you, or maybe there's some combination of it. Maybe there is some sort of horrible corruption going on. But at the end of the day, what are you there to do? You're there to do your personal best. And I think a good leader will keep things calibrated along those lines.
That's some wisdom right there, Andrew. I'm imagining that if Krishna were your charioteer, they might turn to you and say, Andrew, you have a right to how you play. You don't have a right to the results.
Exactly. I suppose it's not really an inalienable right, but you did sign up for the competition, right? And you agreed to the parameters of the game, whether or not those parameters are a perfectly fair rule set or whatever. But you showed up, you agreed to be judged by these 4 guys and gals. And so when the result comes in, the result's the result.
Yeah, if you want to play the game, you got to play the game. Go with it.
Unfortunately.
Clue number 4,
sometimes.
A suffocating repertoire. I think that's interesting. Tell me about what a suffocating repertoire look like, and why is this a bad thing for band members? Why does this make a band decay?
Yeah, so a few things came to mind here. So the pipe major will never put tunes into the competition sets that they don't already know.
They're always pulling from their own backlog of tunes.
Exactly. So everyone else has to learn the new tunes, but not me. Let's see. They put tunes in that are clearly way too hard for the constituents is another one.
Do you think that's sometimes
like,
a flex? Like they're just trying to show the band members how good they are?
Sure. It also guarantees that the level of the band doesn't get beyond the level of the leader,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, but you see this a lot, and it's under the guise of we want to play challenging material is what's going to make us better, right? Which, by the way, I agree with, but only to the point that the constituents are capable.
Mm.
If it's considerably beyond that point, then it's a detriment and it's not helping. But I wonder if some leaders subconsciously keep the material beyond the level of the constituents because that keeps the constituents fully constituented.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, especially considering that there might be some subconscious things going on here. It's if I'm that pipe major, I feel in control in this situation, then the situation changing feels out of control. And I want to avoid that. So there might even be like a kind of group self-sabotage going on where it's like, I like the grade I'm in. I don't want this band to move on to the next grade because that would be hard.
Yeah. Pipe major refusing to record the tunes for demonstration purposes.
Yes. So
Oh,
they might have
I
feedback,
don't feel like
but they're not going to play it.
yeah, this goes to your earlier point. Insisting on setting tempos that are too fast and unrealistic, right?
So
That
similar
only
to
the higher
tunes
level
that are too
players can
difficult.
manage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Next point.
Clue 5, they are disrespecting your time. This has to do with
Mm,
having poorly managed practice sessions or rehearsals, rather. There's not really a
yeah.
plan. There's not a clearly stated goal for the evening. You kind of show
And
up.
another one I hate
Yeah.
is if I'm going to play in a band, I'm going to go to practice. I'm going to go to every practice,
Yeah.
with the exception of funerals and severe sickness and extenuating circumstances. But other people in the band are not showing up very often.
Mm.
And the pipe major does nothing to get that person who's not making the commitment to adjust. They just keep letting it go and go without demanding that commitment level or that commitment be honored by all the players. But yeah, but just general time management too. Running a band rehearsal should be efficient. If practice starts at 7, then everybody should be there ready to start at 7
Mm.
and not at 7:30. Yeah.
And
Now, granted, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, but yeah,
but
exactly.
the rehearsal can still start at 7 rather than everybody having to sit there and listen to stories from the pipe major until those last few people show up and then rehearsal starts.
Yeah.
If it's going to start at 7, it starts at 7. If somebody's late, they miss out. That's maybe the better way to run it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yep. All right, next.
Clue 6, cutting down talent at the ankles. You suggest here that they tend to resent high aptitude, sometimes even before it's fully developed. And this is another thing that I'm like,
Yes.
now this is sad, right?
Uh,
But it might be subconscious as well. You got one of those young kids who you can't believe how fast they're progressing and it's amazing. And there might be some degree of fear. Oh,
jealousy.
this kid's going to be,
And
I'm a grown man and this kid's going to be better than me at the age of 12? We can't let that happen. Tell her she's not good, or I don't know what all would go into cutting them down at the ankles, but
yes. But also, I think in certain bands, talented people represent a threat to the leadership as well.
yeah,
Not necessarily today, but obviously in the future.
yeah,
Right. So I've definitely played in bands over the years, or I've been around bands where you could spot this a mile away.
mm,
And by the way, in school, when I did music in school, I had a couple of great music teachers, and I had several where you could feel how much they resented that you were musically talented and into it, right? And in school, I played a lot of percussion. And because I hung out with Scottish snare drummers a lot and I did a little bit of snare drumming, all my percussion stuff in school, like I already had great rudiments when I showed up. And man, some of my music teachers really hated that.
it seems
I'm sure my
like,
personality as a young person didn't help.
but fair
But
enough. Good job being fair there, but but it seems like such a sad thing, but it's such a real thing that I want to be really careful to not cast aspersions, is that the phrase, on people who are teaching or leading a pipe band, whatever it is, for all the right reasons. But like I do think that probably some people end up in like a teaching environment because there's like a power trip involved there, where it's this grown up has come back, especially when it's a public school system or something like that, to an environment where they can be the big fish, right? They have all the control.
going back to, was it going back to point
Yeah, that
one,
was
the
clue
big
one.
fish?
Yeah. Whether it's conscious on their part or not, that's a sad thing. It's too bad.
Yeah, I think talent and excitement should be celebrated no matter what, right? Now, it's true. Sometimes just because you have talent, you might not be ready for prime time yet, or you might have a long way to go still.
Sure.
I get that. But our job as a leader is to help those people get to where they need to go and not to secretly be resenting the fact that they have the potential to surpass us.
I'm worried that I've done this before, Andrew, in a specific way where new pipers come into a band and feel really excited. Specifically, they're very excited to play common march tunes that I've played a lot. And so they'll be really, really excited to play Scotland the Brave or Amazing Grace. And I might, in the best situations, I might just not, I might not join them in their enthusiasm, which I think would be the best. I ought to jump in with them and be like, yeah, that's right. Let's play it. This will be great. But I think probably sometimes I've even been like, stop asking for that tune. We play that. You know what I mean?
It's tough, right? Oh, totally. Yeah. Totally. There could be beginners out there that their definition of a good time is to play Amazing Grace 25 times.
Yeah.
They just can't wait. Whereas for me, playing Amazing Grace even once is like,
I'll go through it once if I have to, right?
Yes. And yeah, that could be really hard, right? I think it's that way with my kids too. I don't know if you have that problem as a parent, but it's like at bedtime, the kid wants to read all of Green Eggs and Ham.
Yeah.
But there's still frickin' 27 pages of this book
left. That book goes on and on.
And it's like, no, we need to go to bed right now. And so you're right. Yep, there's an element to that. And by the way, none of these clues that your pipe major sucks are things that I'm completely innocent from. I'm sure I've been guilty of a lot of this over the years.
But you do say...
clue number 7.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to just basically make the same point all over again. You provide the contrary. You say a good pipe major, in contrast, will see anybody with enthusiasm, talent, etc., and nurture that.
And by the way, it doesn't always mean the person with talent is like some sort of perfect, wonderful cherub superstar type thing.
And
it doesn't mean
it's not always a child
not...
either. I talk about it being a young person. It's often a person who's just new to piping or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we want to nurture their interest and their enthusiasm and give those people opportunities to flourish. Okay, clue number 7. Ever notice how nothing ever really changes?
A pipe major who sucks will have a very small bag of tricks. You say,
and they're not going to change the tactics,
right.
And they're not going to try new things, and they're not going to make adjustments, and it's always just going to be the same. Yeah.
They probably won't have any objective metrics by which improvement can be measured.
Yes, exactly. No direct objective metrics to measure improvement, right? Everything's just going to kind of always be the same. And by the way, you'll also see that the band doesn't improve towards its goals. Not every band is a competition band, right?
Sure.
Not every band is really actually interested in going to grade 1, but usually the band will have goals of some kind. And then along these lines, not only will daily operations never really change, but progress towards the goal never really meaningfully changes. And that'll be a tell sign.
Yeah.
Okay, clue number 8. I think I've been guilty of clue number 8 for sure.
I am in many aspects of my life. The just let me do it micromanager kind of situation, which of course I'm immediately making excuses for myself, right? But I'm thinking to myself like, yeah, but when I do it, it's because it's faster, right? It's like this thing where it's like, oh, I could teach you how to do this thing, but let me just hurry and do it. And then we'll be done and we can go on and get this other thing done.
Yep. So it's like when there's a maintenance problem, instead of teaching the constituent player how to do it and how to take responsibility for it on their own, what you find yourself doing is to just grab their pipes and you get it done for them.
Yeah.
But that's bad for a number of things. Another great example is tuning, right? Is typically in a pipe band, right? The pipe major just tunes the band. And of course I did that.
Yeah.
More and more. And of course we had like the tuning team and we did all the tuning and everything. But the problem is if you do all the tuning and if you don't put any responsibility on the constituents to contribute to that process, they're not learning. They're not developing their skills and their ear and their intuition.
And in some maybe worst case scenarios, that might be tied into some of the other clues that we already covered, where it's like it's a maintenance of control for that leader to be the only one who really knows how to do these things. You remain dependent
Exactly.
upon them if you're playing in that band.
And you hold the keys to the kingdom too, so
Yeah.
nothing can operate without you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then that's a fear of delegation is in there too.
Yeah.
I think in Oranmore, I delegated pretty well. It took me a while. You develop your group of people that you trust to do things well. And yeah, I think a master of this, in my opinion, is Stuart Little. He's really a master of letting other talented people contribute to a large degree in how the band operates.
Mm.
Stuart participates in the tuning of the band, but I think most people would be amazed how hands-off he is, and he just lets it happen, and he lets other talented people do the tuning. And he's there for guidance and support and input when necessary, but when it's not necessary, he lets it happen. By the way, the same thing goes with the assembly of the music. Stuart is, for such an amazingly creative guy with amazing intuition, he's willing to let other people put things together. And of course, he provides input when he thinks something could work better, or when he has a cool idea, he's going to bring them to the table. But I think most people would be really surprised how decentralized the operation of Inverary is, in a good way, in the sense that I think everybody has a role on the team beyond just standing there and not making mistakes.
I love that adds to the existence of Inverary as its own thing. It's not Stuart Little's band. And so it can outlive him. It can be bigger than him. It'll keep going when he goes to do something else, all that.
I think so. Yep. I think that's right. So anyway.
So clue 9.
Number 9?
Yeah, that's that they are missing the forest for the trees.
This reminds me, by the way, this point reminds me of, oh crap, I said 10 reasons and I have 2 left to go. No, let's see. Missing the forest for the trees.
But you do suggest that this might look like they are insisting that you play a really hard read without really thinking about, like, what's the point of, like, learning to play? It's like, it's not about any of that. It's just like, you must you say that they're likely to rely on gimmicks, and maybe this is one of the gimmicks. We all have to have really hard reads. If you're not suffering, you're not playing bagpipes. That kind of situation.
Yep. So maybe hanging on to little dogmas or little things that everybody does without really thinking of it, or using using a lot of the gadgets just because they're gadgets.
Right, using gadgets rather than playing.
I think another one that's not in this article that comes to mind when I hear the phrase "missing the forest for the trees" are pipe band leaders that are fixated on the result, as opposed to fixated on producing the very best music they can create. So a lot of people will get second place. They'll produce a great performance, but then they get second place and it legitimately ruins the whole thing. And they're unhappy about the whole weekend just because they got the wrong result. And by the way, and it shows, right? And the followers in the band can clearly see this.
Yeah.
Or another one, I remember a certain band. It wasn't in our area. It was an adult band. And that band had done a lot of recruiting over the off season and try to assemble like this super band. And I remember at the time I was teaching our junior band, which is all kids. And at a competition they were in the same grade at the time. And the kids band would normally win. I think it was probably in grade 4, right? The kids band would normally win because, they're well-taught young kids and stuff. But maybe the kids were in a bit of a rebuilding year. And anyway, this adult band had acquired a bunch of great players. And I remember at an event, it's an opposite example of what I was talking about. First place band was this adult band that I was talking about. And then the adults as a team, but certainly leader was involved here. They went nuts, like they won the worlds or something. They were like, yeah. And the kids band was right next to them. And they were basically like looking at these kids like, yeah,
in your face.
Screw you, sucker, in your face.
No child can beat me.
Yes, exactly. And then maybe are we missing the forest for the trees there a little bit? I wonder. It's like your grade 4 band is your grade 4 band is made up of 60% of people who have played in grade 3. And, you totally stacked your band. Yeah. And then it was like, yes, yeah, throwing the Glengarries in the air and running laps. And oh man, it was quite the scene, and it was like, yikes. I think
We
maybe
sure
they
showed
might be
those
missing the
kids.
forest for the trees. And let's just say it's been probably 10 years since that happened. Do you think that group is still together, going strong?
Of course not.
No. Nope. Okay, so anyway, missing the forest for the trees, yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
All right, number 10,
So
ungreat expectations.
ungreat, not great expectations. Do you feel like that's just, is this a vision thing? Is this that an unideal pipe major just isn't thinking that anybody can do any better anyway? So it's like, let's just maintain right where we are.
Yeah, maybe there's not a clear trajectory mapped out, but I'm thinking of like when you get to band practice and there's no real clear plan about what's going to go on today.
Yeah.
Another, one of those is like when you get to the end of a set at band practice and the pipe major just says, that wasn't very good, guys.
But
Let's run it again.
Yeah.
You know that? It's the age old thing. Oh, that wasn't good, guys. Come on, let's run it again. So there's no specifics. There's no instruction. It's just all very fudgy and hazy. Yeah.
Yep. I have been in that situation, and it makes you tired in body and spirit.
Yep, exactly. So there you go. There's the 10 reasons. I mean, the title was aggressive, but I feel like the 10 points are just sort of common sense, and they don't necessarily have to do with piping specifically. I think it has to do with any operation of any team where leadership is a key element of it.
Yeah, and within piping, it's also, it occurs to me that these 10 points aren't necessarily exclusive to pipe majoring either. It's every one of us can. I mean, hopefully hopefully you and I did enough confessionals to make clear that these are all things that I do too, and it's good to think about them and try to get better at them.
If you walk away from this, let's say you are a leader in a pipe band, and you walk away from this discussion thinking, "Oh, I'm a good pipe major because none of those apply to me." That's a pretty good sign that you're not really being honest.
Maybe think about it a little more.
If there's people out there that have zero issues with any of these, I don't think that's a thing. Everybody's got little weaknesses here and there they could work on.
Also, if you walk away from this discussion thinking those guys are stupid and all these ideas are bad, also maybe a sign that they're worth considering. But also, if you walk away from this feeling really crappy and terrible about yourself, not the intention. You do clarify here, Andrew, later at the end of the article, you say, regarding the clickbaity title, you say, a better way of saying this might actually be, your pipe major could be doing a lot of things in a better way. That's the way to think of it, right? All of us could be doing these things a little better. So if we think about them, we'll get a little better at them.
If you play in a band with a pipe major that's particularly bad, particularly sucky, for just to keep things on theme. If you play in a band with leadership that's particularly sucky, go find another band. Go play in a band where the leadership is good. I would rather play in a band where the leadership and the team is really strong, even if it's at a lower grade, than a band that's at a quote unquote higher grade, but the team and the leadership is kind of crappy and not ideal all day long. And we learned this the hard way over the years. I'd rather be in a leader in a group where the followers all want to show up and work hard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And could I foster that better? I think it goes both ways. Interestingly, this article got some discussion on Reddit, which I happened to find when I Googled this to see if I can bring it up. And yeah, a leadership and followership are pretty darn similar. A good follower is really just a leader that's not in charge. That's what I try to be indispensable, totally reliable as a follower. I think I'm probably a better follower than a leader in overall, probably, because I'm good at it. It's like follower. Okay, what do I have to do? I have to be really prepared. Got to get my bagpipe as good as I can possibly get it. And I need to not hinder band practice in any way. So really, maybe it's a topic for another day. Followers are just leaders that aren't in control of the group, that aren't in charge.
I like that. That's a cool way of framing it.
Followers are just leaders that aren't in charge. Exactly. And that's the way I try to do it. So we could probably take a lot of this away as followers as well, even if we're not in charge of our bands. It's important not to go to band practice tomorrow and be like, pipe major, here's 10 reasons I think you suck, bro. because that you wouldn't be a very good follower if you did that either.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the leaders are just, they don't have the experience yet, or they're not able to do it yet, and they're getting better. And so just because they're sucky in certain areas doesn't mean we should issue the harsh verdict and you throw in the towel. It just means there's room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key thing that you do bring up right at the beginning of this article is there are people who, because of these experiences, want to quit piping entirely. That's what we want to avoid.
Mhm.
Don't quit. Go somewhere else if you
Yes.
must. But you also do clarify right at the beginning, and at the end, you finish with a call to action. It's on all of us, right? As members of the pipe band and as leaders, just take these points as ways to improve, and we can improve. We can all do better. But don't quit. Don't quit. If you're in a situation that's driving you toward quitting, get help. Don't quit. Keep playing.
Yeah. Yep. I think so. Indeed.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us if you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that. Your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.